Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. We should be starting in just a few minutes. We're waiting for people to pop in and for our co-host to join us. Just give us a few minutes. Hi, everybody. This is Ami Doshi. Just wanted to say thank you so much for joining us today. We're just waiting for people to log into the webinar today. So we will be starting again in just a few minutes. Just hang on. Thank you. Megan, I see you have joined the webinar, which is great, but I think you've joined in as an attendee. We just need you to log back out and join us as a panelist so we can see you on the screen. Hi, everyone. Just wanted to say hello again and thank you so much for joining us. We're just waiting for our co-host to join us today. There's no real webinar without some tech problems, so just hang on and be patient with us while we get this sorted out. Thank you. There we go. Hi, Megan. We can't hear you.
Oh my goodness.
Yes,
Sorry, I'm
yes, we are
trying to
live. We are live. Hi, thank you so much for joining us. Thank you, everyone, for your patience. There's well no webinar without some kind of tech issues. So, and I know you're just coming straight from teaching a class. So thank you again. And I think we're ready to go. We have people popping in into the webinar as we speak, but I think, respect the time, we're just going to go ahead and start. Thank you again, everyone, including Megan or Dr. McCoy, for joining us today. It is such a pleasure to have you on our webinar series. And I just wanted to, first of all, say thank you so much to everybody. We really appreciate you taking the time to be with us today. This topic about difficult conversations around money that affects all of us, no matter where we are in our life journey. Money is just a complicated resource. So just to start us off, I wanted to say to those of you who've attended our Limitless Women, Wealth, and Wellness in-person events in Dallas or webinars this year, thank you so much for your support. For those of you who are new to Frontier and the Limitless program, just a little introduction to myself. My name is Ami Doshi. I'm a director at Frontier Investment Management. We're a full-service wealth management firm based out of Dallas, Texas. We've been in this industry for about 31 years. We manage around a little over 9 billion in assets under management. And we help our clients save and invest for their futures, build generational wealth, and confidence to retire knowing they've planned well. The Limitless program at Frontier is our women and investing program. Our goal is to empower more women and many brave men that I know are on the call today with the wealth management tools and knowledge they need to live out their best life with purpose and confidence. So before we start, I wanted to just do a quick introduction to Megan. She's really well accomplished in this industry, and so I'm very thrilled to welcome you to our Limitless series. Dr. Megan McCoy is an assistant professor at Kansas State University's personal financial planning program, where she teaches courses based on financial well-being, financial therapy, couple dynamics. Dr. McCoy holds a BA in psychology from the University of North Carolina and an MA in marriage and family therapy from Drexel. She also attended University of Georgia, where she earned a PhD in marriage and marriage and family therapy. She's a licensed marriage and family therapist, an accredited financial counselor, and was the first financial therapist in the United States, something we're going to talk about shortly. She's also the co-editor of the Financial Planning Review, which is the CFP board's official academic journal. She's published over 70 articles in top-tier mental health, family science, financial consulting, and financial planning journals. She's been awarded grants from the Financial Planning Association and the National Endowment for Financial Education and FP Canada to continue research in this area. She's been featured as a financial well-being expert on the Today Show, NPR, BBC, The Wall Street Journal, and many other media outlets. Thank you again for spending the afternoon with us. So before we dive into kind of the nitty-gritty of all of the stuff about how to talk to family or loved ones about money, I want to talk to you about your experience around becoming the first certified financial therapist. Can you share with us what that means? How did you come into this line of work? We'd love to hear more.
Yeah. So I was so lucky that I always knew I wanted to help people. So the therapy track was determined very early in life. But in 2008, when the Great Recession hit, I was working in a therapy center, watching my clients come in with emotional tension or stress and conflict with their partner around money. It just finances became center of all my family and couples therapy sessions. At that point, I was like struck by how directly tied our emotional well-being is to our relational well-being or overall well-being. And then I was lucky enough to and attend the first financial therapy conference and got to see a live demonstration. It was both the financial planner and a therapist working together with the client. And I just remember sitting there and being like, oh my gosh, my clients need this, but I need it too. And so that's when I went on and took additional courses in financial planning and turned my research focus really towards how money and well-being intersect. So I should back up and just say briefly that financial therapy is this discipline that both mental health professionals and financial planners both work in to kind of train in both disciplines.
And did you have a say or create this program? Were you involved in some of the beginning stages of building out the program?
Yes, really, the program at Kansas State started from the amazing work of John Grable, Sonia Luter, and Christy Archuleta, who are also great names in this area. When I came over in 2015, I started teaching 3 of the 4 financial therapy courses. And what I did is redesign it to match the Financial Therapy Association's learning competencies. And so I'm really excited to be part of the narrative around financial therapy and the education of it.
I'm so excited to hear this because, we deal with money issues all the time with clients, and our job as wealth managers and advisors is to help clients with their resources. But a lot of the work around managing resources, time, talent, and treasure comes from their relationship with money. And so as I was thinking through this topic and this theme to bring this as a session for our Limitless attendees, I was thinking how interesting to interview a financial therapist and get your perspective on this. So we hosted a similar event last year, an in-person event, and very, very well attended, but a lot of people asked me to bring this back up. And so I'm just curious, before we dive into this, money is just a complicated resource. We have a lot of baggage around our relationship with money and our money stories. Can you talk through a little bit about where this comes from and what shapes our money stories in the very first place?
Oh gosh. And there's so many sources for where a money story develops. I love asking the question, like, what is your earliest money memory? And listen to clients share happy memories. Like, I remember the first time I babysat and had like this big stack. It was probably like $17, but it felt like so much money. And so it was such an empowering desire to be entrepreneurial, this desire to gain more money. Then I think about other money memories, like watching my parents maybe have conflict around money, or I have occasions where I've lost money or wasted money that maybe kind of internalize I'm just not good at money. And so I think there are so many said and unsaid experiences around money throughout our lives that we can experience and kind of shape our relationship with money. There's even a fun exercise if the people in the audience want to do one day where you just ask to draw every money memory you can think of. It's called the money egg exercise if you want to look it up. And just kind of draw like all these little images of times where you earned, time where you gave, time where you realized you had more or less than your loved ones, times where you felt stressed or happy or optimistic around money, and just see the layers of money memories that make you and kind of hint at your relationship with money. And it's also about what is not said. Like I remember filling out my FAFSA for college, like how much student loans and stuff you're eligible for, and turning my dad and asking him how much do you make, and seeing all the color drain from his face because he had never said explicitly how much he made. That was a taboo topic, and there's so many secrets or taboos within the family around money, but those shape us as well.
And so, can you just refer back to that resource that you just mentioned? I want to make sure that we can bring that back up to the attendees at the end. Again, it's called the Money Egg.
Egg. Yep,
The
the money
Money Egg. Okay, great, wonderful. Yeah, this is something that I could include again in our newsletter when we share this
egg.
recording as well. Um,
Excellent.
so when you have clients who are couples come in and talk to you about just having difficulty discussing money issues, whether it's, you know, a partner, whether it's a spouse, how do you coach them through coming to the table where the conversation is not so combative, right? We rehearse the conflict so often in our heads when it's an uncomfortable conversation. We've already had the fight in our head so many times so that we then participate in the conversation with all that baggage. I read a quote somewhere that said, the more you avoid it, the worse it gets, right? And so we're each bringing in our own money baggage into the relationship. And sometimes it's a handbag and sometimes it's 3 to 5 large suitcases. So how do you coach your clients that are couples or spouses and how to approach these conversations with care so that it's a safe space for for your clients to share?
Absolutely. I think, first of all, you're absolutely right that because money conversations, we're just not taught how to have them, that oftentimes we wait until something's on fire, something's wrong to have this conversation. And so, one of the first steps I take is actually starting with a positive conversation. My husband and I quarterly buy a lottery ticket and we go to money date where we actually talk about if money was no option, what would we spend more time doing? What would we spend less time doing and outsource it? What passions would we pursue? What would be different about our lives? And so I think having money conversations that are about the goals, the dreams, the wishes, the values can often start money conversations going a different way. Kind of like the idea of a proverbial bank account, like making a positive deposit before withdrawing with maybe a more sensitive topic. I, I think it's also really helpful for couples to get to name the underlying issues because there's this great quote about how money is the object in which couples project their deepest fears, dreams, and hopes onto. And so I think normalizing by naming, hey, this money conversation isn't about what you bought or what you didn't buy. It's not about a number in an Excel sheet. It's about your wishes, your hopes, your sense of power and control. It's about these deeper layered things. And so we should have empathy for ourselves and for our partner in how difficult this is going to be. And then one more tangible skill or trick I find helps couples a lot is that when you do find yourself getting heated, bring out a piece of paper and start jotting down ideas where you're like, okay, this is, let me write down what your perspective is, what my perspective is, what we've tried in the past, what we think might work. By being able to focus on that paper, what you'll find is you're making your frontal lobe, that thought cognitive processing part of your brain, kind of take over instead of the emotional reactive part of the brain. I think that's a really nice trick to kind of slow things down.
I love the idea of, removing the emotion behind money and understanding sort of the why behind the conversation. I know when you and I talked a few weeks back about this webinar, you used language around or being conscious about specific language using complaints versus
Yes.
criticism. Can you walk us through some of that role-playing language?
Yes. So this comes from John Gottman's work. He has great YouTube videos. He has great articles for couples. But what's cool about John Gottman is he created the Love Lab. He studied couples in Seattle, thousands and thousands and thousands of couples, and he could almost predict the outcome of the conversations based on the first 45 seconds of a conversation. Because there are some things that lead to more productive conversations or may lead to more conflictual. What you were talking about was something called complaint versus criticism. The more we can be specific about behaviors rather than generalizing to personality, the better things come off. Like for instance, I live up to my absent-minded professor role very often in multiple facets of my life. I tend to not be as conscientious as my husband, who's a much more slower, conscientious person. I'm much more impulsive and let's go ahead dive into this. So if he's having a conversation like, I wish you were more thoughtful about your spending behaviors because I noticed that your Amazon shopping went up. That I could kind of address. If he was like, gosh, you are always so oblivious to your actions. Why are you so absent minded? When it becomes about the person rather than the behavior, it is harder to respond in a non reactive way.
So could you give us an example? So if you could, I know you talked about
Yeah.
this one example. If you could give us another example where we're looking at the situation where it's us versus the problem instead of me against you or you against me or I.
Yes, I love this. So some of the more like clear cut ways of doing this is using I statements, like
Mm-hmm.
feelings and addressing the underlying emotions. And then again, thinking about the problem as outside of you. So instead of you're spending too much, is I feel like we're having um, like a unalignment, a misalignment around our spending goals. And how can we work on making sure that both of our needs are getting met? And so by using the I word and bringing the problem from within them to a shared thing, even if you do want to change it after all, but even if you do want to change it, that language allows you guys to have a more productive conversation about it.
Got it, got it. Megan, I'm getting some feedback that your voice is sounding a little muffled, so
Oh,
maybe we need to
yes. Oh, I'm so
raise it
sorry.
just a little bit.
Yes.
While you're doing that, I know another thing we talked about was just when and how to have the conversation. I love the idea of not doing this necessarily where you're face to face, but maybe doing this while you're on a walk. Can you just talk us through why that dissipates some
Sorry, I'm just
tension?
gonna take my headphones off, so it'll just be one
Much
second.
better.
Are you
It's
guys able
much
to hear me
clearer.
okay?
Yeah, it's much clearer.
No. I'll just be louder. How's that sound?
Yes, much better. Yeah, getting
Oh,
feedback that that's much better.
oh, good. Okay.
Yes.
Excellent. So, in that last part, can you repeat what you just said to me?
Yeah, we were talking about how to dissipate the stress. Don't sit in front of each other. Some of the tactics would be maybe have
Yes.
this conversation while you're on a walk. I thought that
Yes.
was interesting.
I love the idea of distraction from being too hyper focused, of shifting your viewpoint from this is going to be a one-time fix to this is going to be an ongoing conversation where we can make baby steps towards meeting each other in the middle. I think the worst piece of advice we give newlyweds is don't go to bed upset, Sometimes we do just need a nap. Sometimes we do need to take a break and have a snack. Sometimes we do need to just be able to walk away, gather our thoughts, and come back. And so I think to kind of summarize that, I think walking will help decrease your emotional arousal by letting an outlet through the exercise. I think taking a breath and any kind of breathing exercise can slow things down. I think taking a break is great. And then you couple that again with this sense of we're a team, and our goal is not to fix our partner, but find a way where we can both meet each other's needs. I think those small shifts can make a huge difference.
I totally agree. It's so interesting, all of what we're talking about, because typically in the wealth management space, we can fix or we can work with our clients on how we manage the assets so that they can live their best lives. But on the other side of that is, what is it that they want to do with those resources? If they're not on the same page, we're really only kind of aligning 50% of the issues, right? So we need them to be able to come to the table as well, behind the scenes, doing a lot of this work on their own. So thanks so much for, for all of the suggestions. What I wanted to talk to you about is a transition out of this from couples to what's going on with young women. And there's the gender gap, right? We know what this is, that when women hit a certain age, there's a pay gap, there's a gender gap between what men and women make. Typically, this is sort of once they have kids, there's this gap where over their lifetime, they're making about 20% less than their male counterparts. But there's an interesting statistic that says young women who don't have children yet or don't have children are often out earning their male counterparts. And I just thought that this was kind of an interesting statistic, and would love your thoughts around this. I remember reading some statistics around this, that the gender wage gap is narrower among younger workers or younger women nationally, and the gap really varies across geographic areas. So, for example, I wrote some stats down. In 22 of the 250 US metropolitan areas, women under the age of 30 earn the same amount or more than their male counterparts. In both New York and the Washington metro areas, young women earn about 102% of what the young men are earning. And in the LA, Long Beach metro area, the median earnings for women and men in this group sort of identical. So what are you seeing in the dynamics for this, for this age group of women when it comes to their relationship with money, their relationship with their partners and their spouses, when they're making more or identical?
Yes, it's so interesting. We are seeing that that women are graduating college at a higher level, that are pursuing jobs, but by the time that age 30, it does kind of switch back. And that probably is the fact that we do tend to caregive more, not only for our children, but our aging parents. It's the way we tend to be socialized. I know there's also research that we tend to seek out jobs that privilege work-life balance more than our male counterparts, who tend to choose based more on income and benefits. And we also carry a heavier mental load of the tasks that are unseen, about remembering when our husband needs a doctor's appointment, when our kids need a doctor's appointment. There's actually a significant research that married men live way longer, and they finally unpacked that to realize it's because their wives were caregiving and taking care of them, making sure they were taking care of themselves. So there is what we notice, all these strengths to what they call like egalitarian couples, like couples who respect and love each other as equals. Doesn't mean the same amount of money, but as equals are happier, fare better, respect each other, are better friends, those kind of things. But there's an interesting U-shaped pattern that exists when it comes to income, that as women make more, their husband's satisfaction tends to go down. Meaning that if women don't make any, their husbands tend, this is a very high level, society level examination, but as women make no money, their husbands are dissatisfied because all the resources are coming from them. As women make more, up to 40% of what their husbands make, the husband's satisfaction peaks. And then as women make more than half or the same or more than them, their husband's dissatisfaction grows as well. And this isn't to say that you should make less than your husband or women shouldn't make as much as husband. What it really talks about is this sense of purpose in the relationship, that how do we take care of each other? And men's unhappiness is rooted in not feeling like they're taking care of their family as much if their wives are making the same or more than us. Perhaps it's an opportunity for men to learn other ways to take care of how they can socially and emotionally take care of their children and their wives, or they can take more responsibility around the household. Because part of this is, I think, the sense of injustice and unfairness that comes with two high earning couples, where the wives may be working as much as them, but then still taking care of their parents more, still taking care of the kids more, still doing housework more, still having an invisible load. And so their satisfaction in the relationship is decreasing as well. And so there's a great book called Fair Play, and it even includes a cute little card game that has couples actually divvy out, what do I do around the house? What am I not seeing you do around the house? What are you not seeing that I do around the house? So you can get more gratitude for what they are participating in, and maybe even switch some of the cards. Like right after my second child was born, I was having a big funk. I was like stuck inside with the two munchkins. I was like feeling it's like not getting enough exercise. I just felt a little stuck for a little bit. And my husband and I were inside one day, and I was folding laundry, and he was like, "I'm gonna go out and mow the lawn." And I was like, "Oh, I'm stuck doing laundry." And he's like, "I'll switch with you." I went out and mowed the lawn. I got sunshine. I got music. I got physical exercise. And I felt so much better. He got to enjoy air conditioning, and he was relaxing, and he enjoyed folding laundry. So we swapped for a while. And so the fair play doesn't say a tit for a tat, because that's never great for couples. But do we feel like we're both getting our needs met in terms of our household responsibilities?
I love that you can gamify this process. It takes a lot of the tension off of communicating the frustration around, I'm always doing this or you're always doing that. And then the communication shuts down. It's such a unique way. Can you just repeat the resource again?
Yes, it's called Fair Play, and it's a book and a card game.
Got it. Great. We definitely see, you know, in our line of work, we definitely have a lot of situations where one spouse, in this situation, if we're talking about women, are making more than their partners, or they're about to inherit, and their net worth individually becomes not equitable, and they have more. Sometimes it's more in cash flow, maybe sometimes it's more in like real assets, but there is a bit of an imbalance. And this is really helpful to help couples kind of learn how to communicate around this. So I wanted to just do a little housekeeping check for a second. We have the chat function turned off for compliance reasons, but if you have any questions for Megan and I while we're chatting, please send an email to limitless@frontierinvest.com. That's limitless@frontierinvest.com. I have my co-pilot Jennifer on our call right now as a co-panelist. She will be watching for these emails. She will let us know if there's any questions coming in. But I just wanted to take a quick little housekeeping break to say that. So I want to transition into talking about blended families. Another very hot topic, difficult topic when it comes to money. Money is already a difficult topic when we're talking about partners and spouses, but then you throw blended families into there and it's all a big mess. I read a statistic that in about 40% of all new marriages, at least one person was previously married. So blended families is a lot more common, and it just comes with its own unique set of financial dynamics, right? We're merging people and families that have really built very unique, very different money stories and money ideas. And so when you have a situation like that with your clients, how do you help them navigate through some of these issues? And when you and I talked, we really spent some time talking about if money conversations are not handled positively and in a healthy way, it can lead to what we call a parentified child inside a blended family. I really want to spend a little bit more time on that. So can you just walk us through what that is? What is a parentified kid?
Yes. I think I might back up, but make sure I don't go down one of my rabbit holes because that's what us teachers like to do. But I think one thing you nailed was the idea that things become more complicated when we have a blended family. Like the metaphor at the beginning that we're all carrying either a purse, a handbag, or a suitcase of our own money history gets multiplied when we bring our partners in. And then we gets multiplied if we're also dealing with the baggage of our exes who are also part of our family system and part of the child rearing decisions. And so I think blended families do have additional concerns or barriers that need to be overcome, but I don't want to leave anybody in a blended family feeling not optimistic. Like it is possible to, and then you have four loving, additional parents to get to support you and your kiddos. So there's two things with blended families. I'll start with the parentified child, and then one other thing I want to make sure we talk about is that how research recently has come out that financial infidelity occurs much higher in blended families, and they're kind of connected. So make sure I again stay on track.
And can you describe what is financial infidelity?
Absolutely. Financial infidelity is when you lie to your partner about money. It's things like, don't tell daddy we went shopping. It is things like, oh, I got that years ago. Pull up the tag. It is little lies or big lies. There's also, big examples such as hiding debt or hiding accounts or minimizing how much you make or, I don't know, it's called
I,
exaggerating what you make.
I wanted to just share one example here. I've heard of things like where one person in the marriage says they're going to the dry cleaners, but what they do is they buy new clothes and they have the store send the clothes to the dry cleaners. I guess that would be an example of financial infidelity.
Absolutely. And it's not always bad. I have been guilty in the past of lies of omission from my husband about things that I thought I was going to, like, he wouldn't care about. And some of the smaller ones may mean nothing, but I often equate it to kind of a canary in the coal mine that if you find yourself lying or lying by omission a lot about your spending, that it might be a sign of maybe you're not feeling assertive enough to ask for what you want in your marriage, or maybe it's a sign that they blow off the handle too much. They need to find better conflict resolution or better ways to talk to you. Or maybe it's a sign that that money isn't talked about enough. So the financial infidelity in and of itself, it's never the thing that I'm like vilifying. It is the underlying reasons that you feel like you have to have financial infidelity. That is just something to unpack further so that you can have a stronger relationship. But blended, yeah.
No, so I was going to kind of lead into the parentified child inside a blended family. There's a
Yes.
lot of literature out there about parentifying kids when it comes to the financial decisions. There's financial parentification, there's emotional parentification. Can you help us understand what that means and what the impact on the children in a blended family where we're not really discussing money in a healthy way? What does that look like and what does that do to the child?
Yes, and parentified children can exist in so many different areas. I'm a firstborn child. I think most firstborn daughters, especially, may be slightly parentified, where we're treated as older, that we take on more adulting responsibilities at a younger age. And I think of it as a gradient. Like it doesn't mean it's bad necessarily, but when we put undue pressure on our children to be our emotional support or to act like an adult or to interfere in adult dynamics, it can have negative consequences for children. It doesn't have to, but it can. And with blended families, when there's a lot of tension and conflict around money, it can cause a lot of problems because of mental accounting. So one parent may be paying child support and seeing that as the amount of money that is for the child. The other parent is recognizing how the child support isn't factoring in the brand name that they want. I don't know why water bottles all of a sudden became the thing in middle school, but my daughter always is wanting another water bottle. Like, does child support really understand that they want the Awa Walla Walla water bottle?
$500 for a water bottle, yes.
Yes, does it really? And so there's a lot of mental accounting that goes on from both the giver and the receiver of it. And then if you add in additional partners and children maybe living in two different households, what are the expectations around giving children money in one household may have been different than the other household? And how do you create fairness and equitability about that? And I've also seen with blended families, sometimes by accident, it seems easier to just say, go ask your father for that, go ask your mother for that. And we might not realize the pressure that it's putting on a child, because it is hard to talk about money. And so putting that on a child to avoid conflict with your ex is probably protecting them on one level to decrease the conflict between you two, but maybe putting them in a role that isn't the best for them as well.
Yeah, I mean, what I have seen, either through personal experience or with clients, is maybe one spouse is officially covering one big expense in the divorce for their children. And because they're covering that, there's this sense of, well, I don't really need to be supporting anything else, and it could be left on to the other spouse. But then that other spouse is getting very frustrated, and the children pick up on that. And so I definitely have seen that.
Especially
What?
because I think that the definition of child and extended child or extended adolescency has been growing. Do we stop at 18 when so many children are in college full time? And do we stop when they're in graduate school? Do we stop at different points? What is the marker of like helping our children? It's a little blurry now, and I think that causes difficulties as well.
I mean, I think it's very normal to see in family dynamics, whether it's right or wrong, right? Where the frustrated parent informs or lets the kid know that there is, oh, the other parent is not stepping in to do this, or all of this is on me, especially if you're single parenting.
Absolutely.
And
Absolutely.
we kind of don't realize what the impact of that is on the child. So, can you talk us through a little bit about what the impact of a financially parentified child looks like? How do they grow up knowing that they had to see or witness where one parent maybe got the raw end of the stick and verbalized that quite a lot to them, where they picked up a lot of the responsibility of maybe I shouldn't spend this, or maybe my mom or dad is going to be in a slightly worse place if I make this decision. And they take on a lot of the undue, age inappropriate responsibilities. Can you just talk us through what happens as they get into like adulthood?
Absolutely. There's been a couple of studies, especially one by Dr. Kamenetz, about how parentification around money can lead to more anxiety in general, more anxiety around money, less able to stand up for themselves. They tend to like put themselves second to other people's needs. Brene Brown's book, Atlas of the Heart, has this beautiful introduction about parentified children, about how this, like, are you okay? And how you're so worried about managing everybody else's emotional state that you tend to put yourself last, and it hurts our ability to be close when we're so focused on taking care of others. It doesn't let them see what we need or receive things from them, and so the relationship can never get to that true level of intimacy when the barriers in place. So I think those are a big issue. I think also I think self-esteem, like, we have to remember that no matter how much a jerk or ex is, if they're the parent's child, that child sees themselves as half of that person. And so even though we're talking bad about our ex, the child might hear that as talking bad about components of themselves as well.
Mhm. Yeah, I would definitely see that. I'm curious about this sense of hypervigilance or the scarcity mindset around money for kids that are parentified financially. What does
Yeah.
it look like as adults?
Yeah, I think the scarcity mindset comes out in two ways, like this fear of never having enough, fear that I'll never be safe enough. And then also almost this like competitiveness that like it's a finite pie. So other people's successes feel like they're going to take away from our own. And so it can play out in so many different ways. But I think the scarcity mindset and financial anxiety is fascinating. Like, for instance, we know that people who are able to engage financial planners tend to have a higher net worth than general America, if you include everybody in America. The APA every year surveys Americans and say 72% of Americans have financial anxiety, which is already a lot. We surveyed financial planning clients through Financial Planning Association, and it was like 68% of our clients were still experiencing anxiety, not because they didn't have a great plan in place, not because they didn't have enough means, but this kind of fear or this vigilant kind of not being resolved. And so unless you have a planner who understands the importance of client psychology, I don't know if you can ever attack that a scarcity mindset that is so easy to develop.
It's so true. I in this work that we do every day and through the Limitless program, bringing resources to clients, some of the things I hear back is, I need to change my scarcity mindset. I have enough. The plan says I have enough, and it never feels like I have enough. And so I often kind of get into this conversation of, the point of working with an advisor, the point of this whole planning process is to give you a sense of confidence, but it's not actually the number. It's not the number. It's the sense of you will make the right choices. You can trust your choices, that your relationship with money can be one of abundance. So it's really interesting to see where some of that hypervigilance, the scarcity mindset comes from. I mean, it comes from when we are young, right?
Yes, yes.
When
Even
you,
young, it's like our 30s.
yeah, I feel like I'm still constantly unpacking that, even when we lead clients through that. When you have clients that are going through that, or families that are trying to navigate the money conversations in blended families in a more healthy way, what are some of the recommendations? I know some of the things we talked about was, if you have two sets of parents, so a blended family, two sets of parents, one of your suggestions was to have all four of those adults sit down and come up with a where they're on the same front. They have the same story about money, where they're not weaponizing money, not weaponizing the other new spouse, where they're all on the same page. Can you talk through how you could encourage the new spouses to be comfortable having this conversation between four adults?
Yes, I think it's definitely stepwise. So the first step is really you being comfortable with your relationship with money, with your relationship with your ex. We talked, I know when we met briefly, Amy, about how forgiveness is for ourselves, not for the other person. And so doing our own work with our self-awareness around the traumas you experience, the anger you experience, making sure you're okay with your ex is the first step. Then bringing your ex in and say, this is for our children. Let's get on a shared page. We can do this together. We don't have to be best friends to be great co-parents. We don't have to be best friends to make sure our children are protected. But I'm seeing some like inconsistencies in how money is talked about and shared within the families, within the siblings. And I just want to make sure everybody feels a sense of fairness and justice. And at that point, then you could bring in the new partners in as well to really get on the same page, all with the idea of this is for the kids, not for us.
Absolutely. And I know there's some part of this where we kind of have to remind our kids that we will be okay. It's not their job as children in a blended family to take care of our financial needs, but it it seems that it's normal sometimes we see in where there's one frustrated parent that will put this unduly on the child. So what are some ways we can communicate that we are going to be okay? It's not their job to be worrying about us financially.
Uh, my
See
dad
that a
always says,
lot?
yeah, I see it a lot. My dad always says little pitchers have big ears. It's like a water pitcher reference with their ears, but little
Oh,
kids,
yes.
yes, but kids sense our emotional state. And I think hiding it sometimes backfires on us. Like our desire to put on the brave face backfires when there's an inconsistency of what they sense and what we say. And so there's some research in the book Nurture Shock where they had all these families make a pledge that they weren't going to have any fights in front of their children ever. And then they interviewed the kids 20 years later, thinking these children were going to be so great. Like they hadn't seen argument in 20 years, they should be great. No, those kids were anxious. They didn't see how conflict was resolved. They didn't see the end of the fight. They didn't see what happened to make it conflict to okay. And so modeling for our children goes beyond being perfect, but showing them when things are tough, this is how we get past it. When we had conflict, your father and I had a little conflict 6 months ago. We're doing better. This is how we got on the same page by being transparent enough to share the solutions and the coping strategies you use. You're going to give those to your children as well.
I mean, we've talked about a ton of gold nuggets, advice for families, couples, kids, but I feel like what you just said is just so counterintuitive to most people. We grow up thinking we're going to shield our family members from the money conversations, shield our kids from, but it is actually the opposite. We should show them some of the challenges and then how we overcome them, just to give them confidence that when they are facing that, they can do the same. It's a
Yes.
good way for us to kind of transition into the context of money and estate planning conversations with our parents. So either where us as adults are talking to our parents about their estate planning, or where maybe our parents are learning to talk to their adult kids about estate planning. So, you know, it's very difficult. I mean, for me as well, very difficult to talk to our parents who are, maybe in their 70s, 80s about their estate planning documents, right? Their wills, their power of attorneys, medical power of attorneys. If something happens to them, what is the contingency plan? It's hard for us to accept something could happen to them. We don't want to upset them. We don't want to appear greedy, maybe trying to help or trying to gain from them some insight on what they're going to do with their assets when they leave behind me. There's just so much emotional baggage when it comes to this. And then, from my understanding, also our parents, those in that age group, they're also concerned about, can our kids handle this information? Is this too much too soon? When's the right time to tell them about what we're leaving behind, what our wishes are? All of it is very difficult.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I think starting off with normalizing that for yourself is powerful. Like, this isn't going to be the easiest conversation, but luckily, the estate planning discussions doesn't have to be a one-time deal. So you don't have to get it perfect the first time. You could really mess it up the first time, and that's okay, because hopefully you'll have many other conversations, because it's not about how much money I'm getting. It is about protecting your parents or your own wishes, and avoiding any kind of tension or conflict when we actually are in the grief process. I only see one client at a time, because most of my time is spent doing research and doing teaching. But my one client for the last 6 times has been family experiencing substantial conflict based on unsaid expectations around the estate plan. And it is a gift to us to protect our kids from fighting with their brothers and sisters after we're gone. It is a gift to our parents to say, we're going to be okay. Me and my brothers and sisters are going to be okay when you're gone. That's where the focus needs to be.
I'm speaking just from personal experience as well. My father passed away about a decade ago, and there was this expectation that the estate planning was buttoned up, everything was fine, things were communicated. It and didn't end up that way, and it has
Mm.
caused a tremendous amount of trouble within the family because there was discomfort in both sides addressing some of these estate planning questions of really what is being left behind, what is the intention behind it. I know when you and I talked, we talked about you start early before there are conflicts, before there's a crisis, before there's a
Or
medical
before
financial.
anybody's even sick, before mortality is even in question, that's the time to start. Yeah.
Yeah. And I do remember back then, 10 years back, when I would talk to my father, there was this concern, right? Dad, I'm not sure if you're in this right state of mind to make these decisions. And my father was suffering from cancer, and I know at that point he was getting frustrated. His health is declining. He doesn't recognize himself as an adult man anymore. They don't want to feel infantilized, right? They don't want to
Absolutely.
feel like they're not able to take care of their own situation. And so, what's some of the language we can use to help them not see this as an attack, or a limitation on their capacity at that age,
Right.
collaborative conversation?
Yeah, I think one thing that has helped me broach this conversation in the past is using real life examples. So if we happen to lose our great aunt, or our neighbor just lost someone that was important to them, using that as an entryway into just making sure, I hope that you feel like you can talk to me about your wishes, because I just want to make sure that I honor them. Or making sure you say things like, do you have connections for estate planning? Because I've worked on that already for myself, and I have met some people that have been really supportive, and you can talk to them about things too. Or things like, have you thought about like how you you want to have your ceremony so that's not about the number. I think there's so many ways to help your parents feel like you trust them, but you want to be in the conversation. You want to make sure that you can support them rather than framing it as, I'm worried you haven't done what you needed to be done.
Yeah, I mean, it's difficult for anyone to start thinking about their own estate documents. What happens to my kids if I pass? What happens to, my spouse if I pass away? It is a very sensitive topic. What I've seen a lot is, we're not attorneys. I'm not an estate attorney, but our clients will bring us into this conversation with their estate attorneys often. And what I feel works really well is when you ask open-ended questions, as opposed to mom or dad, you need to or you should. If you ask the question a little bit more open, it might say something like, what matters most to you when it comes to your legacy? Or have you thought about what you'd like or how you'd like your estate handled? If something was to happen to you, where would you like to see your legacy being showered? Right? So much more
Yes.
open-ended, um, much more open-ended. The other thing I see also, and I'd love your thoughts on this, is when people bring in or are not afraid to bring in trusted advisors into the conversation. So it could be a best friend, it could be a sibling, it could be maybe the estate attorney, right? Whoever it is,
Yeah.
bring them into this conversation with the family to just kind of take the edge off of it a little bit.
Absolutely. And I think that the start of estate planning conversations is the hardest part. And so, what I see oftentimes as family is that maybe one sibling was the one who was brave enough, or just happened to be there at a funeral, or somehow started the conversation. And then all the burden of responsibility is put on this one child, this one adult child. And so, I think giving this opportunity to not only give your parent different touch points, because maybe your sister is perfect to talk to about the emotional aspects of the ceremony. Maybe your brother is great at talking about trusts and tax implications. Maybe you are great about connecting them to the right professionals. And I think this kind of like creating a web of support with the family to share the burden and make sure that there's those touch points that of professionals can make sure that they're executed, because I think so often what happens is that the estate plan needs to be updated and we forget to do that, so the beneficiaries are need to be changed and we don't do that, or we don't update the will to protect other assets. And so I think having a web of support kind of prevents burnout from one person, provides more expertise in multiple areas, and ensures that multiple people are in charge of making sure it stays updated.
So we're talking a lot about perspective from maybe our age in your 40s, 50s, talking to our adult parents about them creating their state documents, making sure they have all the loose ends, fixed up. What about from their perspective, talking to their adult children? Fears around when is the right time to tell our children, whether adult children or not, how much
Yes.
we have, how much they're going to inherit. Maybe they won't inherit anything. I have a client who said, I'm going to die with zero. I'm spending it all. I'm going to have my last check that I write bounce. Kids are fine. And then we have clients that say, no, everything is going to our kids. Everything is going to our charity of choice. How do you work with clients who are struggling with how to talk to their adult kids about what they're leaving behind?
Yes, and I think it can start with your values. Like if your values is having your adult children be independent and seeing them become successful, and your value is travel and adventure, then you have conversations about how I'm using my retirement to travel. I'm so happy you're so independent and financially okay. I'm glad I don't have to worry about you, and live out my wishes. And then once that value is truly understood by the family, it becomes clearer to say, hey, look how my estate plan really aligns to what's important to me. Or maybe your value is charitable giving and you know your kids are doing just fine, and you'll be able to support the charities that you need to make a difference to, because you know your kids will be all right without it. Having those conversations about how important charitable giving is and your legacy around that before tying it to the estate plan can be better. I think that's also true, again, if you have assets that may be liquid versus illiquid that you're distributing, maybe not exactly even between the siblings. Maybe you feel like some of your children have more financial stability than others, or you're worried about certain ones. It is horrible for the siblings when they see those numbers without the context. And so the earlier you can provide the context of the whys, the better, because when we're grieving, I think most people know that anger is such a key experience we have when we're grieving. Uh, they will be less resonant when you're gone and more likely to fill in the blanks with not what you meant, if upset, unsaid.
I want to go back to what you were talking about charitable planning. What I see a lot with, well, I've seen this a few times with some families, and I think it's such a beautiful way of communicating the value they have as a family unit is through their charitable contributions. So what I've seen them do is it's difficult to communicate the dollar value on what we're leaving behind. So then they talk about what is the social capital that they want to leave behind. And they do that through making charitable contributions together as a family. So they're trying to pass on their legacy, not in terms of dollars and assets, but in terms of social capital. So what I've seen some families do, and I think it's such a beautiful way to approach the conversation around transition of assets in a family, is they get together every year and they say, here's a pool of money that we're handing over to you, generation two, that we'd like for you to put out into the community and explain why. And there's a conversation around family values and the kind of impact the family wants to make and the transition of values from one generation to the other. I think it's such a beautiful language of love within a family, and such a great way to start talking about money. I also wanted to make another point. Have you seen the movie The Life List?
Yes, I just saw it
Okay.
recently.
Okay, I did too, and I have to admit, I could not keep myself together. It's such a beautiful movie. This is not a spoiler alert for anyone. It's in the actual like trailer about what it is, but it's about, a woman who is unwell and is dying and is leaving behind three adult kids, and it's about how she decides she's gonna divvy up the inheritance between them, and the two sons get financial inheritance upfront, and then there is a sort of a game that the younger one has to play. Again, such a beautiful language of love where the parent is saying, it's not about the money that I'm giving you. My legacy to you is a lot more than that. It's about the spirit that you embody when you get this money, right? I mean, can you just talk through that? Have you seen other people do things like that?
Oh, I love it. I wish she had done it in before she passed, because this is kind of a spoiler, but she leaves a video. But if you watch that movie, you could see the anger in the daughter that was unnecessary if those conversations had started earlier. I think that movie is a beautiful illustration and can be used as the conduit to having conversations with your kids or your parents about estate planning. It doesn't have to be complicated. It can be as simple as, I watched this movie and it made me think about what would the videos I would send to you would look like, or what the videos you would leave for me. And that could be enough to open the door for more and more fruitful conversations.
Absolutely. It's called The Life List. I think it's streaming somewhere. Definitely have a watch. I know we have 2 minutes left, but I wanted to kind of finish off with one question before we pull up our little slide at the end. But how do we have this conversation with clients, or have clients have this conversation with us where we don't feel like we're overstepping our boundaries, where we can approach the softer side around money conversation and money stories in a safe way?
Uh, I think I think that hopefully clients would be receptive to exploring more than the numbers. I think there's such a matching of firms like yours that really cares about the emotional and relational well-being of our clients beyond just the numbers, that I think it will feel organic to bring it up. And there can always be checkpoints and agendas that kind of lead us back to the bottom line at the end of the day. But I think most times, I think the framing of the firm helps these conversations occur.
Makes sense. Thank you so much for all of your insight and work in this space. It is such an important conversation, and I'm just very thankful for for having connected with you. We're going to pull up, I think Jennifer is working on pulling up our final slide at the end. I know we're just about to hit the hour, but we're going to pull up a slide that has a QR code. And Jennifer, let me know if you're having trouble with that. But when the QR code comes up, if you are not receiving our Limitless communication, our newsletters or events such as this, scan that QR code, send us an email. We'll make sure that you get on the list so that you get to participate, enjoy more events like this. We're always looking forward to bringing in more subject matter experts. Our next one will be June 6th. We're going to be talking about financial literacy for the next generation. And with that, again, Megan, I want to say thank you so much for all your insight, your feedback, the great work you're doing in this space, for the resources that you shared with us. And thank you everyone else for joining us and making time for us and this conversation this afternoon. Take care.
Thank you.
Thank you.